What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Whiskey, Web, and Whatnot with your hosts, Robbie the Wagner and Charles William Carpenter the First.
Yeah, I killed the other two.
Yeah.
That's how you take over. I'm now the king of carpenters.
Yeah, our guest today is Dax. What's going on, Dax?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Superb.
Do you want to give a couple of sentences for the folks at home about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dax. I am a software engineer. Been doing this mostly at very early stage companies, either as a founder or like the first employee for the past 10 or so years. Past couple years, been full-time working on open source, helping people build stuff on AWS, which everyone loves and I'm sure is really excited to do. But we try to make that a little bit easier. And yeah, spend a lot of time online just hanging out. So that's me.
You forgot shit poster, Twitter shit poster. By the way, this is it's not a PG show. So
that comes with the when I say open source developer, like that, I think that's implied. It's like the marketing part. It's not shit posting. It's called marketing.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I have to clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's I'll start marketing more directly.
Yeah. If it gets engagement, it got the job done, right?
Yeah,
that's fair.
There you go.
Alrighty. So to get things kicked off, we'll start by talking about the whiskey. So Dax asked me to get the strongest, highest alcohol proof that I could. So I selected today the Bell Mead Sour Mash Straight Bourbon Whiskey, it's 90.4 proof, so 45.2% alcohol if math works. I don't know. They don't give you the mash bill, but they say it's a proprietary blend of differing mash bills and yeast strains, but does include a high rye of 30%. It's not age stated, but it does have to be a minimum of 4 years to be called bourbon in the United States. And most research that I found said that it's usually a blend of 6 to 8 years. So even though this is a Tennessee whiskey, the misnomer is it can still be bourbon.
Nice. That sounds really good. I didn't understand 90% of what you said, but I think I'm sold already.
This is why I bring whiskey into the show, so I can, for this just one moment, be the smartest person in the room. That's it.
Well, I'm already intimidated now.
Gosh.
We need to start having whiskey experts on so you can not be the smartest person.
Yeah. Well, I'm not opposed. Everybody wants to learn something. And then we have fancy glasses. You don't have to have fancy glasses.
That's fancy. I put ice in mine. I don't know if that was the right move or not.
Okay. I've given this advice before too, though, but I think it's good and it's worth continuing to share. So I was on a tour at a distillery many years ago. Old man is doing the tour. It's usually like retirees or whatever else. And he's talking about like some of the super expensive whiskeys, some of the cheaper ones. And he's like, at the end of the day, the best whiskey is the one you like. And personally, I think that includes the way you like to have it. Who's taking this into their body? It's not a trophy. I mean, if you enjoy it and you happen to enjoy it a particular way, roll with that. It's only Robbie I don't let do ice. So
yeah, I used to do ice.
All right.
He did crushed ice though, so it was like, come on, it's just pour water in at that point.
No, it's efficient as long as you drink it fast enough that it's not watered down.
Yeah. So this fancy glass is called a Glencairn. It's a traditional way to like funnel up the. Yeah, it funnels up.
Oh, it has an impact
aromas. And it's supposed to reduce the amount of like alcohol actually that affects the smell that gets. Who knows?
Yeah, mine is called.
People make a lot of stuff up.
Whatever I found in my parents' cabinet. So I'm not sure what this is.
And it's called a free to you glass.
Yeah, it is.
You get a little floral. And
I was going to say that
caramel. Yeah, I got to get ahead of you. So yeah,
I was trying to pick a specific
smells.
floral, like an amaryllis, maybe.
I am not good with.
Are you guys just making this stuff up? Like, what are you?
Oh yeah.
What are you saying?
Okay, so yes and no, right? Like, there are common terms that people will use to like derive things out of whiskey, but it's always about like smelling and trying to like, it doesn't smell like flowers. It smells like a kind of whiskey that has kinds of grains in there that was in a kind of barrel, getting some of the woodiness also.
Right.
But ultimately, there's no way to like give that a made up word. So you find different olfactory descriptors to say like, this kind of has like, as if I was smelling a flower, as if I was smelling like a chocolate or a caramel or chocolate. Yeah, they do that with coffee too. Are you?
I was actually going to say, my friend is super into coffee and he explained this exact same concept to me. It's not like literally the smell, it's like the concept.
Exactly. And it's the same concept with wine too. So
yeah.
All right, I'm going to try it.
Also smells a little like Twizzlers.
See, the problem is also when people say things, they start to, it gets in your head. As soon as you said Twizzlers, guess what I was tasting? A little bit of like, it does makes mouth happy. Mouths happy, plural.
I did not taste Twizzlers. I will say that much.
Yeah.
A little bit of that like fake red, whatever the Twizzler flavor is. I could get a smidge of that. It's some kind of
red dye
sweetness
40
initially. Yeah, red dye 40 doesn't cause cancer. Twizzler is a sponsor of this podcast, so that's why he has to say that. Nobody sponsors this. No, but I continue to get more of a caramel or brown sugar in it as it sits. But actually, was it a couple of years ago? We were in Tennessee, and we have tried this whiskey because we went to the Greenbrier Distillery in Nashville. Tried a couple of other things, so that's how I knew it was like this will be okay for Dax. And the one of the tricks is that your tongue, when you first have this harsh alcohol, will start salivating and throw off your tastes. So you should do a first one where you kind of swish it around and get that out of the way, and then chew it. That's what they call it. Chew your whiskey first, and get some bitter too. A little
I'm not tasting much because I scarfed down a little bit of Taco Bell right before this as I was setting up.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, beautiful pairing, the Taco Bell and the whiskey.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah, I don't know about that. Like if you're going, Robbie argues that Taco Bell isn't Mexican food. It's just its own brand of food. Yeah. Like it's its own genre. So it's like Del Taco or Taco Bell. I don't even know what else would possibly be in that category.
I agree with that. Taco Bell is like Mexican themed, but it's not like Mexican food. Like that's just their aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah. The American Crunchy Taco, they were one of the original. I don't know. I saw something once that said they invented the crunchy taco. I don't know if that's 100% true, but they were definitely
fake.
The purveyors of making that popular in America, I think.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, because that wasn't a thing in Mexico. So I guess in that sense, they were leading with that initially. And Mexican pizzas are delicious. They're kind of tostadas, but kind of not. Maybe I can buy it. Okay.
Yeah. If inspired. If
someone else
Mexican
says it.
Inspired.
Yeah, inspired by.
Fusion, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a bunch of white people have a birthday party and have a piñata there, right? It's like, sure.
Well, maybe you don't have the party at Taco Bell, but yeah.
Maybe
you could.
You might have the party at Taco Bell.
Some people get married there in Vegas, so.
They had a pop-up Taco Bell hotel in Palm Springs a few years ago, actually.
Yep.
Yeah. It was kind of a funny thing. It was going on for a month and sold out like crazy.
Yeah.
It was in a bougie area of Palm Springs too. It's I don't know.
Well, we're getting very into whatnot. Let's rate this whiskey.
Okay, so we have a highly complex rating system, so I hope you're ready for this. It is, since we are developers, we will make it zero-based. 0 to 8 tentacles because of the octopus. So 0, this is terrible. I would never have it again. You could even spit it out if you want. 8, amazing. This is my go-to adult libation of all time. We'll just say that way. 4 being just kind of this is fine. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not great. There we go, middle of the road. Since we have a lot of whiskey, we tend to break things up and segment it. Although this, so this is a bourbon. Would be like Maker's Mark is a bourbon. That's kind of a popular one. Jim Beam, things like that. I'm not sure what you've had already, but I don't know. You can categorize it how you want because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So you want a rating from me, someone who's never rated whiskey before?
Right. Well, yes.
My first rating of all time.
We don't want to influence you.
Yeah, but you don't. If we influence you too, so that's kind of that's the only reason why you're on the spot first. There's really no wrong answer.
Yeah. So I've only ever had just the whiskey that you would see in liquor stores, nothing special. So the stuff you said, Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, obviously, just stuff that probably is not very good. So relative to that, it definitely tastes similar. I'm not this is a completely different drink. Wow, it gets so different when it's special. But it's definitely a lot better. So I would probably, if you said 4 is a meh, I think I would rate it higher than that. I'd probably rate it a 6, I think.
There we go. Yes. That sounds great. That's a nice, solid, not bad.
Yeah.
Pretty decent kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty good. I would drink this more.
Good, because you have the rest of the bottle.
Well, my wife will take care of the rest of the bottle. She's the drinker of the two of us. She loves making interesting cocktails, all kinds of stuff. So
nice. Okay. Knowing that, I'm going to put a pin in it then. and for a second, like, I'll come back later on. I got an idea. Robbie?
I think I would say a 6 as well. I think it's pretty good. It's better than most bourbons. Like, it has a little more spiciness to it, a little bit of some things I'd expect from a rye. So I'm a fan, and I'd give it a 6.
Yeah, I knew you were going to be kind of high because of the high rye content in the mash bill. Well, for me, it is tasty. It's pretty easy. It's not like anything crazy expensive either. So, and it's pretty accessible. And I like approachable whiskeys too. I'm not like Pappy Van Winkle is my 8 and this is the best thing ever. But, like, I think it's way overpriced for what you're getting out of it. So given that, I'm at like a 5.5, something like that. Like, I'd come back to this. I see it. I enjoy it. Depends on kind of what I'm in the mood for. So for me, I'd say 5.
All right, so let's start with some hot takes, or we should just call these lukewarm takes, because most of them are not hot
some of them
anymore.
are old, and some of them is like whatever. So and these are essentially like questions we picked up from tech Twitter and the ridiculousness that happened. So
Nice.
Yeah. So for TypeScript, inferred types or explicit types?
Inferred all the way. Inferred all the way. And to expand on that, this is something where I'm not like, there's some things where I'm like, okay, certain things click with certain people and other things click with other people. And like, I lean this way or I lean another way. This one, I'm like, this is not in that category. It's in the category of like, I don't think you understand the tool if you're not using inferred types. You're probably writing stuff in a very different way. It's not really taking advantage of certain things. And that's why that whole conversation was so frustrating for me, because it's like, you're missing the point. But I actually think overwhelmingly most of the big TypeScript authors leaned towards inferred types. So I feel like at this point, that's like, we landed somewhere with that one.
Yeah.
Our sample audience, I would say 80% of them said it depends, and then had very long explanations for going in either direction. So I think you'd be surprised. I mean, again, maybe it just depends on who you ask, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, 80% of the people you talk to are cowards, and that's my hot take.
There is some of that. You're afraid to take a side. But
yeah, I think there is some of that. I think they're like, well, I know what I like, but I don't want to tell you what to do.
I don't want people to be angry at me.
Yeah, I have my wife for that. All right, I'm going to take the get rebase or get merge.
Oh man, you guys are just going. I remember this week. I remember this week where it was first the inferred types, and then we went straight into the rebase. I'm definitely in the rebase camp. The first thing I do whenever I started Git repo is I like enforce all the things that make it so require linear history, a rebase before merge, all that stuff. We have switched to just trunk-based development, so we like hardly use branches anymore. So yeah, it just becomes, that question even becomes less relevant when you're not heavily branching. So definitely on the rebase side.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm a proponent of rebase, and I think just because back in the day where I got told read the fucking manual and do things right and kind of thing, you just get your stuff rejected and wasn't necessarily like fostered along the happy path of whatever project. It just is like, I worked hard for this.
Tailwind or vanilla CSS?
Ooh, I actually don't do either. So my history is I used to use utility classes. I had a library I wrote myself called Legos. Basically like a shittier Tailwind. Like I kind of grew it organically over time. I just added the classes I need. But it was all utility classes meant to be used very in line with the markup you were writing. At some point when Tailwind came out, I did switch to Tailwind. But this was after like 5 or so years of using that pattern. And then a couple years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I've stopped. I think I used Tailwind for like a short while right after it got popular. Then I kind of stopped using that pattern entirely. But I don't use vanilla CSS. I still stick to, there was a great library called Stitches, which was a CSS and JS library that's now unmaintained. But right before it became unmaintained, I worked with another developer to bring its API to a new project that was built on top of Vanilla Extract. And Vanilla Extract is a define your CSS and TypeScript thing. Everything gets statically extracted, so there's no runtime overhead, but then it still has all the great stuff that Stitches did for building components. So my take on that is, the reason I do that is it's a nice middle ground between, I guess it's not really a middle ground. Tailwind is great because you don't have to think at all. Like you just tweak your designs in line. Very, very productive up front. With something like, so the other project I'm referring to is called Macron, like dessert. You have to think a little bit more up front, a little bit more effort up front, a little more tedium up front, but your markup stays stays very clean. And I found for like kind of long-term maintainability, that's what I lean towards.
Okay, clarifier real quick. So when you said Macron, I thought you were like the French president?
I've always been confused about
Minister?
this. His name sounds just like the dessert. Is that on purpose?
Right. Do you mean the little cookies, like the macaroons?
The circle. But
Yeah,
I think they're not pronounced macaroons.
Yeah, there's only one O.
Caron or something like
Yeah.
that.
We do it
Macaron.
wrong in America, but there's
Macaron.
only one.
Yeah, we
O.
do it wrong in America. I'm sure of that. So
I thought
a
macaroons
lot
were
of-
something else entirely. I thought those were like
No,
a
that's
different
just-
dessert.
that's just us being stupid and just going that.
Yeah.
I'm certain. I mean, like, because my wife loves those things, so we have them all the time.
Oh, I love them too. They're so good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Oh, yes, this is a good one for me, I guess, just because I've been talking about it lately. Will HTMX change the way we build apps, web apps?
This is a tough one because HMX finally gave me a follow, and now I feel like I owe
Don't
them.
fuck it up. Don't fuck it up.
No,
Yeah.
I've only been making fun of HMX since they've done that, so I think I'm okay.
That's why you got followed, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. No, I don't think it'll change much. I think it is a fantastic tool for languages that do not have a web framework, or like you don't really want a heavy web framework. Let's say you're experimenting with some cool, interesting language on the back end. You do want to ship a web app. Dropping HTMX in is a great way to build a somewhat dynamic application. So I think it's really great and useful in that scenario. And so I think that's where you see a lot of the excitement. But I don't think it affects the majority of like people doing heavy web dev work. I personally build really heavy client-side applications, and it like can't even address that. So it's not even in the realm of like stuff that I would consider.
I mean, I do think it's interesting in providing more like lo-fi solutions. Like Astro obviously preceded that, or not. Whatever. Astro got to prominence prior to and had people just start asking the questions. That's why not PHP now or whatever else? But saying, why can't you have this unified server-side application? And maybe that's okay. The islands architecture, maybe that's okay. And this HTMX being another. Yeah, there's no one size fits all. I think that's probably. It depends is the right answer here,
Yeah, I think if I'm building something simple and I just want to get something interactive and I don't want to do any client side JavaScript, like I would definitely reach for it. It's just not for me personally. It's not a situation that comes up that often. But like I said, definitely see it. And like if you're like getting into OCaml and you want to like learn how to do that and use that, do you really want to build a whole like web development framework around it? Like probably not.
Yeah, there's no danger of me getting into OCaml, so.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
right? Like
I'm gonna write Ember
what
until I die.
or until it actually dies, or until you die. And those might be simultaneous. It's like you'll be the last guy, and you die, and so does it. And there it goes.
Something dying with you is a great legacy to have. I would like that.
It's not. When will we change Tomster to like Robbyster? I don't know. It doesn't.
Well,
work
that is
so
weird
well.
because Tom is gone, so we shouldn't have Tomster anymore.
Oh, I didn't know he died.
Well, he didn't die. He's not part
He
of the
died on a
community
pile
anymore.
of money. At
He did.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. No, he's living very well on a pile of money, actually.
Fair enough. He should move to Miami, is what I hear. All right, so we'll talk a little bit of tech. We'll talk a little bit of bullshit later. But so when did you first get involved in the SST project?
Yeah, so the project I think came out. It was like in the beginning of the year of 2020. I want to say. I think it's hard to remember. Whatever, beginning of some year in the past, and I was one of the first users because I was prior to doing all the serverless AWS stuff that I do now. I was heavily in the Elixir world. I just got bored of that at some point, and I was like, "There's not like much more for me to learn here, so I'm just going to shake it up and try to build things in a different way." Found all these serverless people talking about serverless and like saying all this crazy stuff, and some of it just kind of resonated with me. Was working on something that was like a little bit compliance heavy at the time, and this was a great way to like avoid a lot of the compliance questions when you don't actually manage things that you're responsible for, which is kind of the idea behind serverless. Started to realize, okay, the experience around this is terrible. Started to build my own crappy solution for some of the problems that I ran into, just local debugging and kind of making the developer experience good. Then found SST, realized, okay, they did this a lot better, and they actually have been doing this for a while. They understand this really well. So I started using it just as a way to like play around with some of the stuff I was building, built some test projects with it. Ended up contributing a lot back to it, not in the form of PRs, more in the form of long messages explaining why I think they should rewrite big portions of it and then making them rewrite it.
Oh, that was you. Okay.
Yeah, so I was just annoying them. I might have submitted some PRs, but I think it was mostly me just getting Frank to like redo his work. They were raising a round at that point. They opened up like 10% of the round they were raising to their users. I ended up investing in the company. My thought process was, okay, I believe serverless is going to be bigger in the future than it is now, and if there's an opportunity to build a product in it, these guys will figure that out, whether it's what they're currently building or something in the future they pivot to. And then maybe like a month after I made that investment, I started to leave the role I was in, and I mentioned, hey, I'm leaving, and they reached out to me to ask if I wanted to join the team, and we did a bunch of just kind of conversations, we did a lot of conversations. I think we spoke for like hours and hours and hours and hours, and we all really clicked. So I ended up joining the team, and they basically just gave me my money back, except that now I owe taxes on it. So it was a terrible situation overall, tax-wise and accounting-wise, but yeah.
Their heart was in the right place. Yeah, I got introduced to it somewhere in the like 0.3 days. I came onto a project to like lead a consulting project, and one of the devs was doing a lot of serverless stuff and brought this Dynamoose and SST, which, at that point I felt like it was mostly a wrapper around the AWS CDK. And so it essentially like just managed setting up infrastructure at that point, didn't really do much with your project itself. But then also C.run was happening then too, which was, that was like, oh crap, that hand in hand, this is really nice. Yeah, my only interactions with Jay and Frank were essentially, I have problems, help me. And then, they're just answering stuff direct. It was pretty funny. So that was about the time I first came up with it. And they had like kind of some of the best docs going versus, the serverless framework, serverless stack was just running you through getting all this going. And it continues to be excellent documentation and guides too, to like get folks started. So yeah, I'm not sure how it correlates like your time to join and when C.run was happening, and it's still happening, but
yeah, the history of the company is kind of funny. So they originally built, the thing I referred to as Seed. That was the idea behind that was a lot of people are using serverless framework. Let's build a CI tool plus a little bit more that would just focus on deploying serverless framework projects. When you build a specific CI like that, you can do all kinds of optimizations around like how fast it builds, what it deploys, and optimizing all that. And then it kind of shifted into production questions too, around like tracking your logs, like viewing your logs, automatically watching for errors and alerting you, kind of like how Sentry would. So it's like a full product for going from development to production. What they realized at some point was, okay, even if we literally capture the whole market today, that's a pretty good business, but it's not like a venture scale $1 billion company, because the serverless world is small. And if we just leave the task of growing it in the hands of the existing frameworks, it's probably not going to grow as fast as we need it to. So they shifted towards building a framework with the idea of just making it so companies consider building in this way when they're founded. Because I think at that point, it wasn't even on anyone's radar, like building that way. They kind of had the traditional frameworks. So just even get to the point of it being something that they consider was kind of the original goal of that framework. And it's obviously grown to a much bigger, more ambitious thing now. But yeah, I think originally the website, it was called serverlessstack.com. It wasn't even a framework. I think the thing you're referring to is it was just an ebook, really. It was a guide on how to build fully serverless applications, because I think, if I go back to that time, or like my time before joining, my perception was, oh, that's good for like these little one-off little tasks. Like I need to resize an image, I'm going to put a Lambda function there. So the guide was around showing people, no, you can actually build your whole application this way. It can be really complex, and here's how to do it, and here are the benefits, and here's why you should do it. So the guide itself got really popular, and there's a ton of traffic. And at some point, we just shipped a framework, put it at the same domain, and that was like our acquisition channel for that.
Yeah, which totally makes sense, because serverless framework was like the massive player in the space. Yeah. It's actually what I was using at the time. And SST essentially just set up infrastructure. The application was a serverless framework. But yeah, and like you said, it was, let's put together an API, let's have your React, and because it was even Next at that point, no real meta framework traction. and put the whole thing out in AWS for you, because so many businesses get built upon AWS consoles sucks. AWS CLI is
Right.
hard to navigate around. Let's help you do that and make a little money.
Yeah, exactly.
But to a degree, that brings about the question of like, AWS console sucks so bad and the other tools aren't great that so many companies could be built on top of that. I'll probably just leave Azure to the side because that's self-explanatory. But like GCP, is it as shitty and nobody's building a business on top of that? Or it's just a matter of like the math isn't as good?
Yeah, I would say I think the cloud business is kind of interesting because I don't believe you can catch up to a company that started before you in the cloud business, because it's just a matter of getting bigger. When you get bigger, your cost just gets cheaper. When your costs get cheaper, you get more customers, which makes you bigger, which then makes your costs go cheaper. So AWS just started that before everyone else. And even if you build a better product in certain categories to directly compete with them, it's very, very hard. And I think the example that I give is AWS obviously like prints money to the degree where it basically subsidizes like everything else that they do. Like it makes their e-commerce business look like a side business. Like they make so much money. Yeah, exactly. They make so much money. Google Cloud, which has effectively the same product, just made a little bit of money for the first time this last quarter. So they've been around for a while and they have not been able to make money while a competitor with the same product is like making ungodly amounts of money, right? The reality is you just got to follow where the money is and the attention is. Yes, some people consider using Google Cloud. There's a lot of reasons why I personally won't, but numbers wise, like AWS has 1 million customers. So if our goal is to become the default way to build applications on AWS, if we're even moderately successful at that, that is a huge, huge pool of companies and new companies that are constantly being brought in. Building on top of someone else like that is challenging, but you can do it if they're big enough. And AWS is really the only one that's big enough today.
So really, like, there's probably no near-term future where it makes any sense to make SST work well on GCP or Azure.
Yeah, and the other side of it, on a more technical side, is we are built around the idea of event-driven system. So you define your system as a bunch of events and things that react to events. And AWS is very aligned with that, and they give you primitives that let you do that. Google Cloud is in this weird limbo where they bet hard on Kubernetes and container workloads, and their cloud is still very geared towards that. They're kind of being forced to consider some of the stuff that AWS has just to maintain parity, but it's not like the thing that they're betting on, at least not yet. They haven't switched over. It just doesn't line up with the area that we focus on.
Can we regress back for a minute? Just a quick question.
Yeah.
What does SST stand for? Is it six
Whatever
serverless
you want it.
something?
Serverless.
It was serverless stack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thing. I don't know.
Okay, so the history with this is, like I said, the guide was called Serverless Stack. We just shoved the framework under the same domain just to like get the traffic. But we don't like the name. We didn't like the name for the framework. We didn't have much room to really change it because of the whole SEO thing. Like we do get a ton of traffic just from SEO. And I think just making a complete change was difficult. So we just named it after the CLI, which was called SST at the time. And at this point, my stance is it doesn't stand for anything. People have thrown out some stupid thing, which I kind of like, some serverless thing. There's all kinds of weird stuff. I'm thinking that, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but if you go to NPM on the top, every time you refresh the page, it says it stands for something different. It's randomly generated. I'm like, that's probably what we should go for, because I just want people thinking SST and not thinking about what it stands for, which is a little weird, but I don't know, just kind of where we ended up.
How's that going to affect the swag, though? You know, like every swag run has a different definition or something like that, and then you're like, I got version 2 that had edition. A clever thing. Yes,
yeah,
that is cool.
So that gets people in.
It's like NFTs, but with serverless.
I'm good at coming up with some swag ideas. So I had some for Ryan Carniato, like about his like solid stuff and making it more like his tattoos and like old Dogtown skateboard looking shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Was he on this podcast?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, cool.
Clearly you're an avid listener. I love inviting people on and then trapping them as like not knowing who we are.
Yeah. What was your favorite episode?
Yeah.
I'm also
This
close
one.
to Ryan, so it's like I failed on both parts. I didn't know he was on here, and I didn't, just from both directions. So
yeah,
I'm not a good person.
That's why I wanted you on. I feel like we're spirit animals in a way. I'm also not a good person. And so I laughed too many times at your marketing tweets, and I was like, yeah, we should talk to Dax. I'm into that. Plus, there's this, I was confused. I thought you were the actor with a really popular podcast too at first. And so I was like, fuck, well, I guess he should come on
the
anyway.
white guy with blonde hair, that one.
He was married to Kristen Bell.
Yeah.
Anna from Frozen. You seem like a big Disney fan. You're in Florida. You know this is. Are you finished with your regression, Robert?
I was just
Robert
wondering
Wagner?
the whole time what it was. So I was just curious. Continue on.
Yeah. Conversely, and I know you guys do support more than just Next.js in terms of the front end framework, but I'm curious. So it was a big push not that long ago around Open Next and free Next.js and sort of getting into the internals and unlocking some of that. So because obviously Vercel is highly incentivized to make their stuff work the best on their platform, right? And you guys, I mean, for lack of a better term, possibly say kind of reversed engineered some of that and locked this library into being able to do that independently. Is that a correct assumption, or it's more of what I've inferred and kind of what I've seen there? So everybody gets the power of Vercel, right?
Yep, exactly. That's a goal.
Okay. I shouldn't ask a yes or no question. This is a little problem. So the first part of it then, do you think that's going to be challenging to constantly chase that as they evolve Next.js?
Yeah. By the way, we hate this project. We hate OpenNext. We hate our time spent on it. The reason we did it is because people just kept asking us to, just over and over. People were like, hey, can you help me deploy Next.js? Hey, can you help me deploy Next.js? Frank even told me that years ago when they were interviewing, so I joined SST right when they were finishing up their YC batch. So they were interviewing other YC companies, and so many of them were just like, help me deploy Next.js in AWS. And we just ignored all of that. We did the thing that every founder knows, listen to your users. And we just didn't for several years. But eventually this got so annoying. This got so annoying. And they were like, you have to do this. We're like, okay, we have enough people within our community that know Next.js really well, that know AWS pretty well. We don't use Next.js. Of the three of us, me, Frank J, none of us use Next.js. None of us have ever used Next.js. We will never use Next.js. It's just not an area of expertise for us. But we do understand the AWS side really well, obviously. So we basically worked with our community. We figured there's a bunch of disparate attempts to do this, but there's not anything with a ton of weight behind it, with just awareness of the infrastructure side and just enough people that were actually using something. So we decided to do it, and we spent the effort on it. It was a lot of work. I didn't do any of it, by the way. I was just like, Frank, this is your problem. I'm not even gonna. No one even asked me, to be honest. Someone was like, Dax, they just knew that it was not for me. But our Next.js channel was very active, and we had a lot of contributions from people that helped us get there. It is extremely tedious. It is extremely hard to keep up with intentional changes that Vercel and Next.js make, but also just breakages that they do accidentally. When you actually track it, patch version by patch version, a lot of stuff just breaks randomly between them. It is a lot of overhead, and we will always be behind to some degree. We will always be a little bit worse. There's been a few things we found that we can do better just because of our unique positioning, but in general, it's always going to be a slightly worse experience. But the reality is, and this is kind of very contrary to how Vercel positions themselves, the vast majority of Next.js users, Next.js isn't the thing they live and die by. It's 10% of their overall system. They're not making huge decisions about where they run their stuff just based off of Next.js. They have a separate backend that might be written in a different language. They have their database. They have all kinds of stuff going on. They have all their asynchronous stuff going on. They've got queues. They've got events, all this stuff going on. And they happen to have a Next.js front end. Putting that in a different host for a lot of companies, one, just is tough compliance-wise, tough organizationally. And there's just overhead, just syncing service, pointing to the right services and keeping that in sync in Vercel. It's just a pain. So for most of our users, it's not that's the thing that they're not working on Next.js. It's just a component of a larger system. So for them, they just want to put it in AWS. They don't care if it works 80% as good as it would on Vercel. It's good enough because it's just a small piece.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, for me, the appeal of Next.js, and again, I don't live and die by that particular framework and most things in life anyway, but is that it was just some sanity in the world
Yeah.
of React, right? React is just supposed to render things, right? The view layer. And then people figured out 47,000 different ways to make it applications, and everything's a component or not, or, whatever else, everything in the middle. And the fact that just a bunch of choices were made for you out of the box, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I can live with this. If we're going down this path, I can live with this. And I feel like for a lot of people, that's probably the sentiment. From Vercel's perspective, I'm sure they just want to grab some unicorns that scale and don't want to leave, right? Like, that's the intent. They don't care about people doing experiments on there or whatever.
It's just a challenging situation because I agree, like it is a necessary thing. If you're in the React world, you don't really want to be cobbling all this stuff together. You can, it'll be worse than Next.js. So obviously, if you're going to build a React application, you should just use it. And now it's like even more tightly integrated with how like what the future of React looks like. It's even like tightly integrated into the React docs. Like there's just a lot of synergy there, for better or worse. But that makes sense. It's a tricky situation for Vercel because of the thing that I was describing, where for big companies, it's just not the most critical part of their infrastructure. The companies where it is typically are e-commerce companies. E-commerce companies, their entire product is the Next.js site, and they take advantage of every single Next.js feature, all the little optimizations, everything. And if you look at all their feature set, it tends to lean that way. So I think there is like a little bit of a mismatch. I don't think it really matters that much. I think it's fine for most products. If you're building like a SaaS application, technically the company that's building Vercel, they're a little bit more like focused on like the e-commerce side because that's where the money comes from for the most part.
Yeah. And that tracks. That's why Next Commerce got released. And you see more efforts in documentation and whatever supportive of that particular application type. So it makes sense there. So when we talk about kind of the meta framework and all the decisions made, and we talked a little bit offline about Ember.js, and you actually are familiar with Ember.js, which is Robbie's home.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit about your experience with it. And
so to clarify, I am a fan of something that I discovered from the Ember community. So I haven't like used Ember.js directly too much, but I think, and I might be just misremembering how exactly this connects, but I believe there's something called Ember Data, and I believe that has a close tie with JSON API, if I remember correctly, or there's like a nice integration between the two. So I watched a talk a couple years ago where it was at the Ember conference, I think. Someone was describing how they would build an application that would run on a satellite that's orbiting the moon. So for certain parts of the day, the application would have no way to connect to the Earth. So it was basically like, imagine a client that has crazy latency potentially, and how would you build an application for them? And it was showing how you could use this thing called Orbit, and it's a library, and JSON API, and how all those things work together. I was mostly interested in the JSON API part. I found it fascinating because, and there's this other post that I read, just kind of comparing GraphQL. There's a lot of problems that GraphQL solves very intentionally, and those problems seemingly seem impossible to solve without GraphQL. But when I looked at JSON API, I was realizing, they actually solved all those same problems, but without deviating too much from REST. And all your typical REST tooling still works and it looks like a normal REST endpoint. And it basically has like everything I cared about from GraphQL, which was mostly expressing relationships and like kind of traversing through relationships. So yeah, I discovered JSON API and I was like, why is every REST API not modeled this way? Like, why do we all make up our own like crappy implementation of REST? Like every single scenario you could possibly think of, JSON API had a clear way of this is how you do it. So to this day, when I do, this doesn't happen often, but when I build a RESTful API, usually typically something that's external facing, I will try to follow the JSON API spec. I know that's like close ties with the Ember world.
Yes and no, actually.
Well,
I mean,
mostly
Ember's,
yes.
Yes, because Yehuda has a tie in both
Right.
projects.
Yeah.
Yehuda is also in Rust, and you're welcome, Robbie. I just teed you up, and you got a little validation there. So,
Yeah, it's
because these are a lot of
interesting
things he
because,
said over and over again. Yeah.
We just talked to Runspired, the guy that's like in charge of Ember Data. His big thing at EmberConf was like he wants it to be agnostic, like use it in any framework. So it's going to be a thing that people can use in whatever soon, hopefully, and we'll see if anyone picks it up. But I think it'll unlock a lot of stuff if people looked at JSON API and some of the way those things work together. Or as you mentioned, like Orbit is great, and you can use that in anything right now. We used that a little bit, but it's a lot more complex.
Yeah. I think Orbit initially introduced me to the idea of, I wouldn't say it's like a local first type of framework, but the idea is like your client basically has like syncs data and like can query the data directly locally, and you're more just syncing the state with the server. And the applications I build now are like very much heavily local first, like syncing a lot of data locally, doing as many operations locally as possible. And Orbit was the thing that first introduced me to that idea. I was actually really trying to use it heavily, but if you like go back to my tweets, there's a tweet of mine begging them to like create a Slack or like a Discord because they were on some like weird, I forgot what it was, just one of those like maybe it was Matrix, I don't remember what it was. And I was like,
yeah, it was like one of those Git attached, like
the GitHub thing.
I don't know.
There was a Git one initially, and they moved it to Matrix or something like that while I was looking into it, and I was like, JSON API is great. I really think if a lot more people knew about this, they would like really consider it. Can we just like have a place, which is a place where people are used to going, whether it's Slack or Discord or whatever. And I was trying to get that going, and then it just turned into a debate around like the philosophies of like corporate chat platforms. And I was like, okay, I tried.
Right. Yeah.
So I eventually just struggled getting enough support in terms of like other people building this way. But I do like philosophy wise, and like the actual technology was fantastic.
I think we have some opportunities offline that we could discuss some of that. We know some of the people in those ecospheres that, I mean, we worked on some of the things. We know the Orbit JS guy.
Yeah. What was his name? Yeah, I forgot his name.
Dan Gebhardt.
Dan Gebhardt. Yeah. And then Yehuda sounds familiar too. I think I follow him on Twitter. He's a JSON API person.
Yeah. Like hats on Twitter.
Yeah. He was Rails initially, I guess, and jQuery, and he's been in a lot of stuff. Yeah. So we can bounce around, but we'll go to this first one here of, if you weren't in tech, what other career would you choose?
Oh man, this is so hard because I swear that this is the only job I could ever do. And I'm always so grateful that I live in a time where this is a job that I can do. Yeah, that's a really tough question. My dad's also a software engineer. So like, even if I like think about what my family, I'm just like bred for this. I feel like not really. Like before my dad, everyone in my family was a farmer for like 10,000 years. So I guess not really. Like we shifted in recent history. Man, I don't know. I don't think I have an answer for this.
I think let's clarify and say it has nothing to do with skill or things that you think you could do. Like if you could have any job and just miraculously get that skill, like what do you think would be fun to
like
do?
Interested in, or what sounds fun, or that's true.
That's actually what I'm talking about. I'm just like, to be honest, like I just like what I do, and I don't really care about anything else. I feel like if I didn't have to do this, I just wouldn't really want to do anything. I just like building stuff. So any like,
maybe you'd be a construction worker,
architect. I want to be able to be creative. I feel like construction worker is kind of just like, you got to do the thing.
Architect can be creative.
That's true. An architect can be creative. I'm just, and when it comes to like building stuff with my hands, I'm just terrible at it. Like I just get way more frustrated when something goes wrong physically than I would with like a software bug. So even like building stuff physically, I'm just, I'm like screwed, I think, if this job goes away.
If you weren't born at this time,
exactly,
it would have been real rough.
Yeah.
You would have been like, would you like to supersize that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do like business. I just love like all aspects of building a company. Everything just from organizing the company, like strategy, like marketing, all of that. So I think I would have still ended up a founder of some sort, just maybe less useful than I am today.
Different capacity, but still business minded.
Yeah.
So since you are rich adjacent, have you noticed any differences so far since you've become Lionel Messi's neighbor?
Well, have you guys seen those pictures of him in the grocery store?
Yeah, of course. I'm a big soccer football fan, so I watch a lot of European soccer and was very interested in that. Like, I'm a David Beckham fan from way back in the day, because Manchester United in the 90s was like the shit for me because I'm old and that was normal time. So, I'm very aware, but I didn't know if you have noticed anything, and if soccer's a thing you're interested in, or
it's definitely not something I've been interested in. I can see myself getting a lot more interested in just because it's getting a lot more exciting locally. That grocery store thing was crazy because I've struggled to explain this correctly, but the grocery store he went to is like the grocery store you would go to as a kid with your parents when they forced you to go to the grocery store with them. It was like just like the most local grocery store that everyone has a memory of going to, and then seeing him there with no like entourage or bodyguard, it's like very, very weird for people here. They're like just like in the aisles of like the Publix, like that's so weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why he chose here versus Saudi Arabia. He's like, I need some level of anonymity for my family. Like, my wife is sick of it. It's time.
Yeah,
I don't think they got that here.
He can tell people he's a football player, and they'll go, "Oh," and have no idea what he's talking about. It's America.
Yeah, because he's like 5'8", 5'7", 5'8", something like that.
Yeah, I guess you could overlook him if you're not like really paying attention. I can see that happening. The thing though is he picked Miami, which in a lot of ways is like not in America. Like when you're here, it almost feels like you're in a different country. And there are a lot of soccer fans here. So yeah, it's a huge deal. Everyone's really excited. The ticket prices are insane. Like they're like unattainable all of a sudden. Yeah.
More or less
like
than Taylor Swift.
Right. Oh,
I mean, I heard Taylor Swift is like impacting the economy, so I don't think it's that scale. But
I know across like MLS and the associated like season tickets and things like that, like a $30 match ticket has turned into like $1,000 match ticket.
Yeah.
Like, I'm from like the Cincinnati area, and so good friends of mine have season tickets there, and they all for a moment hesitated. They're like, I don't know, this thing, like I could resell this, and like, you could also just go see him because it didn't cost you $1,000. So
it's increasing the prices everywhere because when he's there for away games.
Any Inter Miami game is like shot up in price like crazy amounts.
That's amazing. And that first game was also like couldn't have asked for a better opening. So it's been exciting.
To, like win in the 93rd minute or something with an incredible free kick, and you're like, that's why I'm here. Well, welcome. They're building like basically the Galacticos too in Miami. So they're recruiting other former teammates of his. And it's like, how is this even possible?
I did see. I mean, there's a lot of money here. That's how it goes. I mean, David Beckham. He's like a very involved. He owns Inter Miami, or like
he's the part owner. Yeah, that was part of his deal back in like 2007. Is that he basically had a locked-in price to get his own team, and so he was like, okay, and then because the fee, there was a couple of different stipulations that applied later on that didn't apply to him because he just had a contract that said, I'm locked in at like 30 million versus 60 million for someone now or something of that nature.
Yeah, and I think I think he just got everything finally approved. Like they're building a new stadium as well, and the plans for it look really cool. Like they're actually putting a lot of work on the surrounding area, not just the stadium itself. So it's definitely an exciting time.
Yeah, if nothing else, making this boring place called what is it? Miami? Miami?
Miami?
I don't know. Some place in Florida that doesn't have a mouse. A lot of Art Deco buildings,
We got F1 like that came here in the past couple of years. Now lots happening.
It's cool. Do you have any other hobbies other than like, writing code and Twitter?
Really? No, I spend a lot of time with my dog. Like he's a Doberman that needs a lot of attention.
Did see that. So I do like those dogs. They're badass looking. So it's kind of a nice thing. I'm allergic to like everything, but to get a dog, something like that or larger would be in my wheelhouse.
I think this is the first time I've had a Doberman. I think I'm probably going to have them forever now because they're just such a well-rounded dog, like very calm for the most part, but they're still big, so they're fun. Like a big dog is fun. There's like great personality, super smart. So there's just a lot that we can do with him, given like he's like a smart dog. There's a lot you can do. So we spent a good time there. I'm trying to get into. I was saying this morning. I'm trying to get into kiteboarding, kite surfing, which is pretty challenging. So I'm just spend like several months getting good at it. But I'm trying to like start going to classes and stuff. But yeah, I figured, hey, I actually live by the water now, so I can do all these water things that I never considered before. Yeah,
nice. How do you practice kite surfing? Like, what if it's not windy? Can you get pulled by a boat
idea.
to practice?
I'll go to
surf. I don't know.
I'll go to my first class and I'll find out. I just don't think you need a lot of wind because it's such a big kite and it flies up so much higher than the person.
Okay.
But there are like conditions that are required, but I think they're pretty forgiving. I did find out though that I can't just go buy buy the equipment and just like pedal out. Like you actually need to pass a test to show that you're capable of XYZ things before you're allowed. Of course, you can go there and no one will catch you, but technically you're supposed to like pass licensing and stuff. So it definitely is like a serious thing. But yeah, I wanna put in the effort to get good at it, because I think once you're good at something like that, it's just fun to be able to do that whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, if you're gonna be by the water, you have to like get a sailboat or get a water hobby, I think.
Yeah,
in some ways.
I would love to have a boat one day, but it's just one of those things where I'm still in the phase of it's better to know someone that has a boat than to own a boat. One day I will own a boat, but
yeah, you know what they say about boats and other things. I'm not going to say it on this. Sorry.
Okay. Very expensive.
There you go. Just go with that. Better to rent it. Yes.
Oh, okay. I know what you were going to say. There's a lot of things you could have said, but I get what you're saying. But yeah, I think it's always better to like have someone else that owns the boat. You don't have to do the maintenance on it. You don't have to drive it. You just ride on it. Like,
there's so many boats here. Like, it's hard not to have a boat friend here. Like, it's just very, very easy to. I guess like I've been saying, rich adjacent.
Yeah,
quite easy.
Yeah. Where did you move from?
So the last 10 years I was in New York, which is where I met my wife. We worked at a company together. She was head of product. I was head of engineering. Made to happen. And then but she's originally from Miami, and she was living in New York for there for a total of 4 or 5 years. And then I actually really wanted to come down here. Like once I started coming down here and visiting her family, and we'd stay here in the winter, I was like, we're moving here full time. I don't care if New York was your dream. Like this is clearly where we're supposed to be.
Right.
But she eventually came around to the idea, and now we're both very happy here.
Yeah, you can touch fake grass. I mean, you've got the ocean. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my front and backyard are entirely astroturf, which I always want to clarify for people was not my decision. Like, you can make fun of me for having fake grass, but know that it wasn't a choice I made. It just is how my house came, and it was not my decision, and I would probably change it.
I have real grass, and I live in the desert, and it's not supposed to be here. So I'm conflicted the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Like I like natural landscaping, and in the back we have it just because I have small kids. But otherwise, I would have fake grass or like xeriscaping like everywhere because I hate wasting all the water.
Yeah, and I don't. It's beyond like aesthetically, I don't love like the manicured lawn as much anymore. So yeah, I don't know exactly what I would do. I think I would just do something crazy in the front yard.
I feel like that's like a white picket fence, Midwest kind of dream.
I literally have a white picket fence too.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's fair. You're halfway to the dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We are about at time. Is there anything we missed talking about? Anything you want to plug before we end?
Not really. I just, when I do these things, I just like to come hang out and chat. So yeah, I think I'm definitely good on that note.
Covered your bases for the most part, I think.
Yeah, we talked about SST. I can count it as this was work, technically.
There you go. Yeah. Just put this on your billable. Frank, you better pay him.
All right, cool. Thanks everyone for listening. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave us some ratings and reviews. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time.
Boop, 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 boop.